Joining us now is William Sawyer. He's the CEO of the Sawyer Group, LLC. Bill, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Don. It's always great to be on your show.
Now, you sent me an email last week, and I had to have you on the program. You're talking about carbon capture and storage. Tell us about that.
Well, carbon capture and storage is not a new thing, but it is new as far as the amount of money being put in it. What it means is that we're taking carbon out of the air, CO2, and we're storing it underground in order to affect climate change. And that's seems to be a very important thing today.
It's an active area of interest these days.
Yes, there's tremendous interest. I was at a conference that was put on by one of the major oil and gas service companies a week or two ago, and that was the first day. That's all they talked about.
Wow.
Was carbon capture and storage, or CCS as they call it. It was important. It seemed to be that that was the focus. There were 20 projects in 2019. There are 50 projects today, and they're expected by the end of this year to have almost 200 projects.
Are there any particular geographic areas where this is done?
Well, geographically, not as much as we're talking about areas that have plants that give off CO2. That may be a power plant, it may be a refinery, it might be a chemical plant, it might be anything that puts off CO2 that needs to capture it because of what is the new rules are.
Is developing a CCS storage facility, is it complicated?
Oh, it's very complicated, far more so than doing oil and gas drilling. First of all, you have to satisfy the state rules and regulations. Then you have to satisfy the federal rules and regulations. And after that, you have to make sure that the underground storage is capable of storing something and keeping it there, not just letting it loose. The Biden administration has put $12 billion into this, and they'll probably use it all up by the end of the year.
I was just going to ask you, who's paying for all of this?
Well, according to my information, the federal government is. An operator goes in and comes up with a plan, and then proposes it to the federal government, and the federal government gives them the money to do the research and gives them money to do the permitting and the drilling and everything. Like I said, $12 billion has gone into this.
Well, what reservoirs are being used to store carbon dioxide, Bill?
Primarily, there are 3 reservoirs that are being used. The first is non-freshwater aquifers. These are usually deeper than regular freshwater, and there's many of these around the nation that are there. They're just places where no oil or gas is accumulated, and it's just an aquifer that's usually salty. The second is depleted gas reservoirs. And depleted gas reservoirs are good because they were already known to have bounded reservoir characteristics so that the gas couldn't get out. And they're depleted and they have no pressure in them. The third, and what's most important to me, is oil and gas reservoirs that are depleted down to the point that there's no primary production, or not much primary production. Because what you can do is you can use the CO2 to do tertiary recovery, what we call tertiary recovery, and push the oil and gas. It mixes with the oil and allows you to bring the oil up to the surface in the CO2 mixture.
Do you have any personal experience with underground storage?
Yes, I do. Actually, for 20 years, I was the expert witness for the U.S. Department of Justice on underground storage, and did many projects for them. I've also done an expert witness case for DuPont and for other oil and gas companies and individual landowners.
You've always been my go-to guy for the oil and gas industry. What do you see as the future for the carbon storage industry?
Well, I'm not sure. I think as far as oil and gas is concerned, the putting CO2 in oil and gas reservoirs is a really good thing. And if the federal government wants to pay for it and help us get our oil out, I think that's a good thing. But there is no real proof that carbon or CO2 is affecting the atmosphere. The scientists have different thoughts about this. One scientist says we are at the end of the period of time when there's a lot of interest in the different trying to say there's a lot of problems going on that may not be affected by our climate change. It may be affected by what's natural. We're having problems with the ice melting, but that may be because we're at the end of a period of time when the ice should melt. And there's no real direct information that tells us that climate change is important. Not only that, our doing and Europe doing CO2 injection is not going to help what's happening in China. China's one of the biggest producers of CO2. There's one other thing that's important. CO2 is what's used by trees and grass to produce oxygen. And if you have a lot of CO2, then the trees and the grass produce oxygen. If you take the CO2 out of the air, then they don't. And they become dead to the world. So CO2 does have an advantage in helping us produce oxygen in this world. So what we need is more definitive proof, and I don't think we'll get that in current years. I think it'll take maybe a century before we get definitive proof.
Once again, Bill, your advice and your information are always very valuable in this program. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Don. It's always great to be on your show. And my belief is your show is one of the greatest ones to help people see what there is to invest in.